Welcome to the part 3 on how we can create MCP server and use it with Copilot agent. In part 1, we have gone through a MCP server create for FMP financial services. You have learned how we can create any MCP server as long as we have access to their APIs. In the part 2, we have learned how to publish it using our VS Code agent mode to Azure Web Services as a web app. Now we are on the last part, and we're going to bring that MCP server into Copilot agent as a tool. Now first, we can see our MCP server is still running. In the Copilot agent, we can see two agents before that was created for custom connectors, which exposing the same APIs. We're going to create a new blank agent, and then we're going to bring in the MCP server as a tool. So we'll call it, let's rename it, edit the name, let's call it FMP Expert MCP. Now we'll go back to our chat in the VS Code. We'll start a new chat. Remember we said previously, keep your chat separate because you want to protect the context window. And I like to create a new chat on every feature. So this is the part 3. Let's say the MCP server on Azure is tested successfully via Postman. Let's move on to the next stage to incorporate that into Copilot agent and bring MCP server as a tool. I've just created a blank agent called FMP Expert MCP. Walk me through to the rest of steps. And let's just go to the Copilot agent. A couple of housekeeping before we import MCP server. So first, I want to make sure my web search is off. So when we test the MCP server, we know it's using MCP server. And then in the settings, remember before we had a problem with the moderation. So I'm going to remove the moderation all the way down to low for now, just as a test. We'll save that. Coming back to our agent, I'll help you to integrate server into Copilot agent. Let me get the best practice for configuring MCP server with coding agent. Include a suite of tools to help you build, modernize, intent. Get the best practice for configuring. That's interesting. Let's go allow that and see what happens. Looks like I didn't make it really clear, and it thinks we are building with the Copilot GitHub Copilot agent, and that's because there are clear Microsoft documentation on how to bring the MCP server with GitHub Copilot. That's what's getting confused. Let's say, sorry, I meant we are building Copilot agent using Copilot Studio, and I need to bring the MCP server we hosted in Azure previously into Copilot Studio for my agent as a tool. Now whilst working on that, come back to your Copilot Studio. And if you go to the tools, we're going to add a tools in. Right? And what we're looking for is MCP server. Now obviously our MCP server is not here, so we need to add a new tool. Go to the MCP, and we're going to provide the server URL, server name, and API keys. Now I don't think we need the API key here because we built into our code. So let's go stay on none first. So there seems to be a bit of hallucination happening again. Is saying steps to integrate MCP server into Copilot Studio. We're gonna go to create a API plugin with open API specification, blah blah blah. That's what we did previously when we did the custom connector. So I took a screenshot of this when we add this, and you can see actually Copilot Studio now supports MCP natively. So after the screenshot, the Copilot coding agent come back, says perfect. Looks like Copilot Studio has native MCP support, and this is much simpler. So let's just follow this, right? We're gonna have a description and a name, and then we'll put the server URL in, which he already knows. So the name is FMP Server, MCP Server, and server URL, we'll copy that, and it should have the MCP // and we'll go create. Let's see what happens. Select none if your MCP server handles FMP key internally, which it is. Now, if you wonder where the API key was, so it was in our environment variable here, and to double check that on your server, you can come to environment variables under the settings in your Azure web app, and you can actually see your keys in here, and you can modify them if you want. But because our pipeline, the CI/CD is from the VS Code, so let's just stick with that. If we make any changes, we make it from here. We don't try to make it a change on your UI directly. Right, so let's go back to our Copilot Studio. We just need a new connection. Let's go create a new connection, create, add in the config. And we should be able to just test straight away. Looks like it's being added. So we have our MCP server with active connection, that's green. We are not asking user for permission before we use it. It should use it automatically when it sees fit. I'm not sure what to provide here in the input, but as you can see, all the tools has been already turned on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if you watched my previous video for custom connectors, we had to import all 8 tools separately, 8 times, with a lot of description. So this is obviously much easier. And the other benefit of MCP is you just make it available and anyone can use it when they build their Copilot agent. They don't have to go through the custom connector to import 8 times for each tool. So let's give it a test and see how we got. Making sure this is the only tool we have, MCP Server, and it's switched on. Under the overview, the web search is not switched on. Okay, so let's go test. And let's start with something very simple. What is Apple's closing price? And let's see whether it will pick up the tool. It did. It went straight to the MCP server. And the closing price is 270. Okay, let's ask a bit more. What day was that? There was an error. Historical data. Okay, now let's check the price anyway. So we know it's calling the MCP server, the one we built. If we go into the price, 273 as the right price. Okay, let's try something else. What about its company profile and cash flow? Now we haven't built our fallback topic. If you are interested, you can see our previous video when we built our Copilot agent with the custom connector, where we had a fallback topic. And if it's not getting from the connector from the tools, it will fall back to a generic internet search. Now, in this video, we're just gonna focus on MCP server as a tool, and I'm gonna skip that fallback topics and the failsafe. All right, so it's definitely going through the MCP server that we have published, and it has all these names. And we got the cash flow statement. Now it is very slow, so it is highly dependent on your web app. Different plan have different rate limit, so you need to have a strategy to have the best load balance. Watch out for the throttling of different plan, and you need to do a lot of testing. This is the end of our part 3 on how to build an MCP server pretty much for anything, have it hosted, and use it with your Copilot agent as a tool. Now, on the internet, there's a trend that a lot of people they don't like MCP server. They don't think that's necessary. It has its own use case, which I can see, especially for internal systems. If you are exposing your individual APIs for the developers or other team to use, now you have another way of exposing them as a set of APIs, bundle them into MCP server, and they can be used by other teams to build their AI chatbots. If you come here to add a tool, you can see a lot of vendors already have MCP built, and you can use them directly within the Copilot Studio, such as Jira, or you can have your Databricks even. But a lot of vendors probably don't have one. This is where it comes handy that you can build one yourself. If you're already exposing them internally via API gateway, bundle them into MCP server and publish that way. It's a AI native way of connect your large language model to these different tools. And if you compare our custom connectors in the first video, we had to import every single tool one by one, and this is much easier. And once it's ready, it's there, and you can use it. It's very convenient. So thank you for sticking with me, especially those of you who've gone through all 3 videos and previous one with custom connectors. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.